Welcome to a Leader's Journey podcast. I'm your host, Joel Gunn. I have Jeff Jaime back on the show with me this week. We had a great conversation last week as he talked about his leadership journey, where he started off in a command and control mindset and then eventually moved into this idea of compassion and caring and connection with his people. He's CEO of many years, written a book just recently that came out. Maybe he'll get to tell us a little bit more about that as the session progresses. But we kind of ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger. You've described this monster of a pantheon in your last time with me, and you said you got an antidote for that. And so let's pick up with that, if you would, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. So a pantheon's this big, ugly monster that's just like I call it the new pandemic. And there's different strains of the virus that's going around. One of them is called like clock botching and silent quitting or quiet quitting, all these different subterms of the same disease, right? And so you can attack and fight back against each of these strains of this pandemic. And the best way to do that in aggregate, it's really just to take advantage of the way that we have been made. By by that I mean our bodies are naturally responding to putting in place things that are, putting in positions where we serve and do good. And I call this the glow to glue leadership model. And the model is sort of a trifecta of servant leadership, emotional intelligence, and something called neuro leadership. When you put these things together, you get a thing, you start creating connection and trust. And the outset of that, the result of that, you start building culture that's stronger and connection and retention. And so there's different ways to create connection. I've actually demonstrated recently how you can use AI to help further your efforts to connect with a specific person, because that's what we're
Hmm.
trying to do. We're trying to do is trying to connect with somebody. And if you knew what to say and how to say it to get a result that you're looking for, who wouldn't want to do that, right? And so whether you're trying to make a sales pitch or convince somebody to do something or help rally your troops, if you spend some time learning how to create the connection, then you're more apt to succeed at building this, unified group of people. And by the way, if you can picture what kind of what we've been talking about, you picture, there's three things that are at play. One, you have engaged people, you have disengaged people, and you have actively disengaged people. So picture a bunch of people on a rowboat and they're rowing together.
Mm-hmm.
Those people rowing together, they're all engaged. That's cool. We're all going in the same direction. Let's say a couple of those folks in the back lift their oars up, but they're not doing anything. They're not quote unquote hurting anything, but they're not helping. They're just kind of riding along. Those people are disengaged. The most dangerous ones are the actively disengaged, and those are the ones who take the oars and they start going the opposite direction. They start rowing against you. They start bad mouthing you behind your back, and they start creating these cancer cells in your organization that grow into strong tumors. And a Pantheon is super happy when that happens because he can thrive in that environment, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the antidote is really to put ourselves in positions to serve not only ourselves, but the community that we live in. And
Hmm.
fortunately, a lot of ways to do that. And the way we do it is we have gotten involved with like Food Bank or Angel Tree or, you know, Habitat for Humanity or even going make snacks for the primarily primates. It doesn't really matter which you pick. In fact, if you can, like I said before, if some of your team members are really strongly passionate about certain causes and you're going to do it anyway, hey, might as well do something that means more to them. Great, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
The key is to keep moving, to keep engaging. And so you get people out of a rut that they might be getting sucked into and they come alive. They come alive.
As you did this in your own company and as you've talked to other people, generally people are resistant to change. Even when you're doing this good stuff, are they resistant to that?
They don't seem to be, and, I see what I see, right? And not everybody 100% maybe let's say, for example, we have a strong deadline because we have to get a proposal out. That's non-negotiable, right? So what I try to do is make enough iterations of us being able to do this. So you may miss one, but you can join another one, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
it's not for you, it's maybe not for you. And over time, and this has happened, the culture will be a filter. And when people say, I thought I was going to come here and line my pocket with extra money or, stuff for me. What about me? What about me? And if that's the mindset, then we did a bad job in hiring because we try to screen for similar yoked mindsets of people that are
Mm-hmm.
generally care, and most of the time we get it right. And some fascinating things happen when you put those people together.
You mentioned, or in the first broadcast, you mentioned the acronym FIRE. How does that, what is it again for those that missed the last one? And then if you could unpack that a little bit, what's it mean in leadership?
Yeah, so they're FIRE, faith infused resilience executed. Faith infused resilience executed. So especially during, it comes up more when you're hurting and when things aren't good and you're being attacked. Like we were attacked by I document this in the book in chapter 6 where there's a, a government representatives who was had it in for us. And had we not gone to that level of realizing that we may not control what happens is happening to us, but we can control how we respond to it.
Mm,
And it's through, faith infused resilience. And so people need to believe they have, especially if it's scary, they need to know somebody is going to help lead them out of the dark place, right? So that's incumbent upon the leader of the group. And so when you execute on that, at least it gives people a feeling of, okay, I'm not going to be left stranded here by myself. It may not end how we want it, but God's already picked out how that's going to wind up. I think he's calling us to be faithful no matter what happens. And we've gone through things and we've wound up, better for it, even with some scars
mm, mm,
with it. So it doesn't mean like you're immune to heartbreak and problems, but it gives you some peace in knowing that God's got this. And by the way, if you want to prove that this actually works, I wear this ring and it tells me how well I sleep. And in the midst of a crisis, if I'm really deep in praying and faith, I sleep okay, you know. Whereas
mm,
otherwise, if I'm worried about it too much, I'll wake up at 1 or 2 in the morning. I can't go back to sleep. That means I'm not really tuned in. So you can
mm,
show yourself if you've made the deepest level of you know what I'm saying?
mhm,
You can
mhm.
prove it. The
Yeah,
data doesn't
scientifically.
lie. So
Yeah.
that's one example of how you can get through that. But ultimately, you know, I'm fortunate to have been shown what this means. Like, what does faith in God mean from an early childhood? And maybe my grandmother and my mom didn't know how to articulate it the quote unquote best way, but I knew what they were trying to teach me. And I learned and I refined what I learned over the years, but it all comes down to that strong belief that God has a plan for you. And I'm just praying that I'm doing what he's asking us to do each day. If I make a left turn, I should have turned right. I'll know it. It'll come up some way. And I just ask for guidance on course correcting. So
Jeff, you've always been vocal about your faith, at least as long as I've known you and before I met you. Uh, but you deal in government contracts. Couple of things here. Not everybody, says, "Hey, I'm a person of faith." There's atheists listening to this broadcast. There's agnostics. There's, a number of folks that may tune in. Uh, but your faith for you is really important. Kind of curious, how do people respond when you don't hide your faith, you're not obnoxious with it, but how do they typically respond?
I've learned I'm glad you asked that because I hadn't thought about this in a while. I've learned this to be true. People want to show what they feel. The environment has told them they're not allowed to. So they refrain from doing it. But if you and I used to tell my team when we go around and meet in these meetings, I would say, "Hey, we're not we're not pushing doors open and saying, 'Hey, here's a Bible,' but we're unlocking it." And you can listen for clues. Like, for example, if somebody says, I feel blessed that I'm so grateful that you start picking up this intel, and that tells you if they want to push the door open,
Mm,
right? I said this in a meeting. I was introducing my team. It was a kickoff meeting for a contract. We were going around the room. I was introducing them. I was telling them, our mission here is to find relevant work, create meaningful jobs, and transform lives for the glory of God. That's what we do. We endeavor to be the hands and feet of Christ in the marketplace, whether it's here or there or anywhere. That's what we're led to do. After the meeting, the branch chief called me to the side. He said, "Hey, Jeff, I wanted to tell you I was impressed by how bold you were with your face." And this is a government representative. By the way, he was a person too, by the way. Right.
yeah.
He's a person. And he said, "I was impressed with how boldly you were with your faith in the meeting. I wasn't expecting you to do that because most people." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Well, I think most people would be afraid of losing work if they said that." And I said, "Is that right?" Hmm. I said, "Well, Al, his name's Al." I said, "If that's the reason we lose the work, then maybe we weren't meant to have the work." And he said this, he said, "Amen, brother." And then here's where it start magically change. He started telling me some intimate things of struggles his son, who was 15, was going through. He
Mm,
was saying, he's struggling. I know for a fact if I hadn't opened that door, he wouldn't have shared his heart.
mhm,
He wouldn't have felt like it was safe to do that. So I think we owe it to people. We owe it to people to let them know the door's open for them to safely open their heart. We're here to serve them, whether it's an employee or a customer or just another human anywhere. If we can live that way, then we have defeated this monster, Pantheon, and people can be people who woke up is the ones who showed up. That's what I say. I want people, the person who wakes up, that's the one I want showing up. I don't want them
mm.
putting on a mask of somebody else, like pretend. And if you model that yourself, my experience is that people will start believing it and they'll start
Mhm.
doing it hurt themselves. And over time, it kind of rubs off.
Well, the pretty much every circle you know of, they talk about how important authenticity is. So it would be disingenuous for Jeff to walk into a room and not let his faith show up, right?
Mm.
You would not be authentic, Jeff, if you go into a meeting and at some point in that meeting you don't recognize your faith. That would be disingenuous of you. I wouldn't trust you as much. Now, I could be a person not of faith, and I may not believe a word you say about your faith, but I can appreciate the fact that you are authentic and bold and transparent as a
Yeah.
leader, right? And so you're not asking people that they have to believe the way you believe. You're just
No,
saying, this is genuinely who I am, and I want to show a small piece of that to you.
that actually happened. I was talking to a guy and he stopped me. He was another government guy. He said, "Hey, I just want you to know, I don't talk about that here. I have my own belief system." I said, "Well, thanks for sharing that. I just want you to know where I'm coming from because for me, it helps me to put myself, in check if in case I'm not following that. You know where I'm coming from. If I stray from there, I would ask you to call me out because I want to be this way. I want to be right. And I know I'm not perfect, but I'm just telling you where I'm coming from, even if you don't believe it. it's easier for you to know where I'm coming from, where my spirit lies. And that
Mm,
way, if I'm sounding very different, then something's wrong. So
mhm.
I have had that happen
Wow.
too.
This idea of culture, right? You're trying to create a culture of authenticity, trust, open communication, a culture of compassion and caring, whether somebody says they're a faithful person or not. So, how do you start to? Does that contribute to the building of that culture? I mean, some companies. Let's be honest. Some companies try to buy culture. Perks, pay raises, uh, whatever. That tends to fade. But what I've seen, in the decade plus I've known you, is there is a real glue to this. I mean, we keep using that word in these broadcasts, and it's not that I'm trying to promote your book, but it really has become a glue.
Yeah. You can't buy a golf game. You can go, my friend always says that you can go buy some super expensive golf clubs, buy some fancy golf clothes, and get the best technically made golf ball and believe you're going to get a good score. And that's not going to happen. You actually have to put in the effort. You actually have to put in the effort and practice and be real with it. And then you could probably buy some, you know, yard sale golf club, not disparaging that, but just kind of to show
Hmm.
that and still be good, still be effective because you put in the effort to be better, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this idea of buying a culture, people understand what that is and it is not. And so you can't buy a golf game. You have to put in the true effort. And it doesn't mean you have all the ideas. I'm super grateful that over the years, I've had people with just enough inspiration to change the steering wheel a little bit better. I would have never thought of, but because they were bought in and changed the direction we were going because they had a voice, they had a vision of something that helped us navigate to even be even better. And that's the beauty of it. When you build this thing, this we call it culture, this dynamic within the people who are trusting you to lead them, then being open and honest and true is the only way to be. That way you don't have to memorize different versions of yourself. That's terrible, right? Oh, what did
And exhausting.
like, let me think about what did I last tell you? You can't keep up. And so, yeah, I made my own mistakes. I still make mistakes. I'm not saying I don't, but I do know what I want to be. I do know what Jesus led us to believe to be, and be bold is what he told us all to be.
Hmm.
Go out and make disciples of all nations, baptize them in the name of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So I take that seriously. I think everyone should, and people need to see an example so they can know that it's okay for them to do it sometime.
Hmm.
They might be afraid not to want to do it because they might think they're the only one. And here you've
Yeah.
led them to believe that, hey, not only should you, but I'm going to do it, and I'm trying to show you what I think it means. Other people might need your example so that they can feel empowered to do it too.
Hmm.
So there's nothing good about keeping it to yourself.
Jeff, you mentioned a moment ago, I know what I want to be. I know who I want to be. That sounds a lot like the word legacy. You say legacy isn't what you leave behind, but it's who you empower while you're here. Why is that important to you? And how do you measure that kind of impact as a leader?
Yeah, I always, in fact, my grandfather, I've talked to people about this. He might as well be standing in my place and talking to you right now because I'm trying my best to articulate what he showed me growing up, right? So he's still around. He's just not living amongst us, right? His spirit is here. I had a conversation today at lunch. He was the center of that conversation because he meant a lot to what we're talking about. And so Max Lucado, another hero of mine, friend and pastor, an author, as everyone knows. He wrote a book called Outlive Your Life. Basically, how will what you do now outlive you when you're not here? And so you yourself told me you just visited your grandson. And so what will you want that grandson to know of you so that he would be on a podcast someday and say, my grandpa Joel lived this way, and it's a way worth living, and it's a way for me to propagate through my children, right? And so I think that's what endures. Jesus was around a couple thousand years ago, and we're still like, that's the way to be, that's the way to live. And while we can't be him, we can try to copy a lot of what he showed us, right? And
Hmm.
so John Maxwell at the recent Global Leadership Summit, he had this great quote, and I think your wife reposted it. It said, people will summarize your life in one sentence. Pick it now. You have a chance now to define who you will be remembered by, about, what people remember
Hmm.
about. You have a chance to do that. So why not do it? Do it now, because tomorrow's too late. And then you're going to wish you could have. Don't be regretful about it. Like, let's live now the way Jesus said to do. It's not going to be all bells and whistles, but
Yeah.
it's it's
Yeah.
worth it's worth doing. It's worth living like that.
Jeff, as we wrap up this episode, I got one final question for you. If a leader's listening today and they're wanting to start building a legacy, something you've said sparked in them, what's one small step they can take tomorrow?
I think they could start talking about, or at least realizing with themselves, what is it that they want to achieve in their life? Like, what is it they want to outlive? You can sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil and start thinking about the values that you want, you know, your life to be about. What is it that you want your life to be about? And that starts there, like understanding that truth about yourself. Step one. And then say, okay, how can I live that out? How can I make that be true when I'm not here anymore? What do I
Hmm.
have to do today to paint the picture of that future self? What does it take? And it sounds basic because it is. That's what I think you need to do, is just define what matters to you and explain to yourself why it matters to you, and then come up with a reason how you're going to get there. If you're not there already, you might already be on a path. You just need to, like, do a spot check.
Hmm.
Do a spot check. That's that's what comes to my mind when
Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure. Just as we wrap up, for those of you that have probably figured out by now, Jeff is a newer author. Just released his first book. Jeff, if they wanted to get a copy of that or learn more about you, where could they do that?
they could go. Well, I have one of the things I learned in my program that I went through to get this published is they say you have to have a website that has your name. So I have a website, has my name, jeffreyjaime.com. This is my, not the J, just jeffreyhyman.com. Or you can just go to Amazon or Barnes and Noble online and do a search for From Glow to Glue. You can get it in a paperback, a hardcover, or even still now you can get a 99-cent deal for the e-copy. It's not, by the way, one thing I did learn too, you don't make any money off of this, but you but the message, if you can get the message out, that's the payment. That's the
Hmm.
payment when you start seeing this fight against this disengagement, in pandemic we're trying to fight. If that happens, even a dent in that would be great payment. So Amazon.com or Barnes and Noble are two places that you can search for the title. And I'd love to hear some feedback from
Yeah.
people.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading my copy. Jeff, thank you so much, my friend. It's always an honor, and I appreciate you taking time to be with us today.
Same here, Joe. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Chat soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of A Leader's Journey podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a thumbs up and remember to subscribe to our channel.